Hi, it's CNT125. We're working on our Security and Design Lab. With Chapter 10, we worked on risk management, so we worked on some security principles with the Chapter 10 lab. With the Chapter 11 now, we're going to work with some additional security principles. So between the two, we will have covered a lot of ground in some security principles and techniques and configuration. So we're continuing our security theme here. All right, I've downloaded a copy of the lab. I'm getting reminded here about we are a white hat hacker. We are doing things today in a manner to learn, not anything nefarious. So we're going to keep that in mind. When we get to the lab room, again, make sure you review the lab, take notes, watch podcasts, etc. before you get to the lab room. It is really wise to take your own notes. That makes more sense to you in the long run. When I get to the lab room, I need to make sure that my Nmap is okay. So I'm going to, on my lab PC that I'm going to do my Nmap on, I'm going to verify that I have things installed correctly. So I'm going to open up the applications, apps, and features. So I'll do applications here. I'll do apps and features. Off to the right, I'm going to do programs and features because I want to see the specific listing. And what I should be seeing is, I'm going to scroll to the bottom, I should be seeing Wireshark and WinPCAP installed. Those two pieces go together. Wireshark needs WinPCAP for us to view the packet capture, save the packet captures, etc. So I need those two pieces. I also need to make sure Nmap is here, because I'm going to run that today. And Nmap is going to use WinPCAP. I need to make sure that NPCAP is not installed. I even have it listed here. Make sure NPCAP is not installed. Okay, so if I do see NPCAP here, I need to uninstall it. I would highlight and uninstall. I want to make sure that Wireshark and WinPCAP is here. Those two need to be here, and Nmap needs to be here. If I happen to see NPCAP, I'm going to highlight and uninstall. The NPCAP and WinPCAP conflict with each other. Okay. If by chance you see WinPCAP not there, we need to make sure that gets there. And what we will do is actually reinstall Wireshark to pick that piece up. And I can help you with that if you run into that hiccup. Okay. My machine is good, so I'm going to close that out. I'll close this out. And it tells you here we need to do a little bit of familiarization with our lab setup before we hook up anything. Because again, we're going to be putting in firewalls, and we're going to be putting in firewall rules. So we need to know how things work before we put these new configs in. So on your PC, I'm going to just open the browser, and I'm going to do a couple quick tests here. I'm going to make sure I can browse to a place like Google or Hack, either one of those. Make sure I can get there. Okay, that lets me know that HTTP traffic is fine, HTTPS traffic is fine, lets me know DNS traffic is fine. Otherwise, I would not get to these entities. So that's good. I should also be able to, at this point, ping something like Google, www.google.com. I should be able to do that. That's letting me know, again, nothing is blocking ICMP traffic. Okay, doing good so far. We're also going to do a quick check to Telnet. Again, we're making sure things are not filtered at this point in time. So to do that, I am going to open PuTTY, but we're used to using the serial port. We're now actually going to click the Telnet option, and we see the port number changed to 23. And we're going to Telnet to a test site called telehack.com. Right here, I have it here, telehack.com. This is a little test site that brings up a bunch of things I can Telnet. And I'm going to use it should be down here in the bottom. Where are you? I'm trying to look across it. Where are you? Should be Star Wars in here somewhere. We're going to do Star Wars. There we go. I guess I might have been looking right by it, but I'm going to do that to make sure that my Telnet connection is working. So this is showing me a little ASCII version of the original Star Wars Episode 4. So it lets me know that Telnet is working. So these tests right here let me know my machine is functioning on the network as it should. All of this traffic is permitted. That's our baseline. The other thing we're going to check, I'm going to do a Control-C here to stop that and close that out. The other thing we're going to do is I'm going to look at my IP address on my machine and see that I'm getting a 172 from the college. Hack is our ISP, if you will. We're getting a 172.21 from the college. Okay, all that we should keep in mind, because as we do new things, all of this stuff is going to change in some manner. certain protocols may not be allowed. My IP addressing might change, etc. So I need to know what I'm working with to start off, so I know what is changing. All right, so there's my background. That's pretty much my background for the lab. Now, as I move into part 1, we are going to connect up our new firewall and get it functioning. So, grab one of the FortiGate firewalls, cable it up, pay attention to the ports, okay? The firewall is, think of it as like a layer 4 device. When I'm connecting to the college connection, that is essentially a switch port. So those are unlike devices. I can use a straight through cable there. So I'm going to go from the WAN port on the firewall, pay attention to the WAN port, into one of the hack port connections. I'm then going to take my firewall, again, layer 4 device, and I'm going to connect to a switch layer 2 device. So again, I can use another straight through here. And I'm going to go from port 1 on the firewall, again, port 1, make sure you have port 1, into, we're going to use one of the switches in our rack. I happen to use my top 2960 in my rack, and I cabled into the gig port on the switch. So we have a gig port here to a gig port here, okay? Make sure, again, that's another straight through. Once I do that, I'm going to plug in or power up the firewall, and it's going to take 4 minutes, if you will, to boot up. So do that, boot it up, and you should be seeing link lights on. Once it's done booting, you should be seeing link lights on. I actually plugged mine in before I started this recording, so I'm looking up now and I'm seeing blinking link lights on the WAN port, and I'm also seeing blinking link lights on my port 1. And again, I'm just double checking, I'm wheeling over right now and looking to make sure I have blinking link lights on port 1 and the WAN port, which I do. So once I do that, again, you might need to wait a couple minutes for it to boot. Once I do that, I'm then going to take my workstation and plug it into port 1 on the switch. So I need to grab my computer cord here. Let me find the right one. This should be it here. I'm watching my link there, good. And I'm going to plug it into my switch port, and I'm going to plug into switch port 1. Now, you may want to console into your switch and make sure there's no config here. Again, I did that previously. I consoled into my switch and made sure there was no config on it, any VLANs or anything that would interfere with my lab today. So you may want to do that, and if need be, use the cleanup commands at the end of this section of the lab to clear off the config and then do a reload. After you run those cleanup commands, do a reload to reboot the switch and clean it up. So I have that cabled up, and I double-checked my connections. I see blinky link lights on. What I should be able to do now is console into the firewall. So I've taken my console cable, and I've plugged it into my firewall, and I'm going to launch PuTTY to connect into it. So there's my serial. I'm going to say open, and just like I would a router or switch, I'm going to hit the enter key a couple times, and I should get some kind of FortiGate login, and I do. So I have that. That's a good sign. What I'm going to do now is try the default login account. The default login account on this firewall is admin for the username, and there is no password set. I just hit the enter key. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to try admin, hit enter for the password. If it prompts me for a new password, that's excellent. This means this firewall is cleared off and I can move on like I should. So if you encounter that, excellent. What I'm going to do is move down to here and continue on. Okay? If that does not work, I need to use password, Cisco class, secrets, something, one of these to be able to log in to get to the FortiGate pound prompt. That means somebody might have left the config on from the last class, or you might even see this right here, some person's last name, FortiGate, etc. So if you happen to see that, if what I just showed you here does not work, if you happen to see some sort of name or anything like that, try password, class, Cisco, secret, something to be able to log into this guy. And then what you're going to do is execute factory reset. Okay. So if by chance, we do this right here. If I happen to see that kind of thing right there, where I'm getting some kind of error, and I'm trying that again. Oops. There we go. Okay. So this is actually, this firewall has been cleared off. So I'm going to enter the new password here. And now I should be seeing that if I've if this has been cleared off, I literally I showed you this process right here. This would actually set the new password on. But if I log in and I'm seeing a name or something there, after I get in with one of these passwords, what I'm going to do is to execute the factory reset. So I would literally do this right here and say, yes, I want to continue, and let this thing reboot. And once it reboots, it should come up clean, and you should be able to log in like so. Okay? So I actually purposely did a reboot on this guy so you can see that process if you happen to come across a name or something like that on there. So I'm going to wait for this to reboot, and then I'll finish logging in. All right, and we're back. As you log into your FortiGate, you should hopefully be seeing this initially. If you do, you're going to use admin as a username, and you're going to hit the enter key for password, and that's going to prompt you to plug in a new password. What you're going to do is we're going to use password. I know that is not a secure password, but it is a password that if another student in another class leaves it on here, we can actually log into this thing and have access to it instead of being locked out forever. So we will do that. That's what we're going to use in here. Real life, you would use a much more secure password. You would document it. But here, we're at least changing the password. There was none before. We're at least putting one on. And now we are logged into basically the admin level of the firewall. So here, I'm going to have you do just a little bit of looking around. We'll do a question mark here. Question mark says these are the basic commands I could do at this level. As you see, it's basically kind of like a erase or show configuration information. We'll do get system status on this guy, and this tells us about the operating system on, and other various pieces of information that might be helpful, like firmware, version, that sort of thing. That this would be helpful to see where we are, whether we need to upgrade, etc. Okay, so this is kind of like a looking at my computer and looking at what's installed on my computer kind of deal. So here, let's now set a username on this guy. So we're going to do config system global. Config system global. I don't know why Mr. Brown is singing the commands here, but now we're going to do a set host name. And I'm going to use my last name, use your last name. And then I'm going to do FortiGate firewall kind of thing. And then we will set that, and then we will do end. And now we see our prompt here changes to my name. And again, that would be your clue. If you log into this and see somebody's name here, you would know this needs to have a factory reset done on up here. Okay, that's one of your clues. All right, so I have a basic. I did some basic commands on here, and as you see, these are different commands than we're used to. So we're not going to do too much more here at the command line. We're actually going to, for most of the rest of the firewall configuration, we're going to browse in and use the browser utility, the GUI utility, for configuring this thing. So right here, I'm going to do an exit, and this will exit me out of the firewall. I'm going to close this, and then I'm actually going to use the browser option to browse in and configure the firewall from here on out. So I'll close that, and over here on my PC, I'm going to make sure that I have a PC or an IP address from the firewall. So I'm going to do an IP config here. Config here, and see what I'm getting. When we started the lab, we had a 172 from the hack network. We're now getting a 192. This is coming from the firewall, and this is the firewall address right here. That's the firewall address on that LAN port 1, if you will. So that is going to be important. We're going to end up using that to browse into the firewall for configuration. So I'm actually going to take that address right here, put it in my browser bar so that I can get access to my firewall. And I'm looking for there's my Firefox. And I'm going to plug that address in up here into the browser bar. 192, 168, 1.99, I believe is what we're using. 1.99, yep. Here we're going to say advanced. We want to accept the risk and continue. And now we're at this is the FortiGate login. We're going to use admin and password. Admin was the default username, and password is the password we just set. And we're not going to save that, and we're going to begin. Okay?
Actually, over here, I think I tell you to later. We're not going to register. We'll do that later. Now I'm into the firewall via the GUI interface. When I come back in the next podcast, we'll continue on with some of the configuration steps in here.